This is part one of a 5-element series where we'll discuss the fire element in relation to facial features, stress patterns, lifestyle rhythms, and support tips. Enjoy. Good morning, everybody. This video is going to be part one of a 5-part series. So for the next 5 Thursdays, I'm going to release one video on this specific topic. And then you can reference these one at a time, send them to whoever you'd like, review them, save them in your playlist, do whatever you want with them. But what we're going to talk about is how to see the dominance of the 5 elements in the face, what features to look for, the stress pattern associated with it, the lifestyle rhythm that you should be leaning into, and then sort of the daily support tip for that element. I'm going to say right out of the gates that this is not everything. When I'm making content for YouTube and I'm taking a huge topic that's basically a universe like face reading and I'm extracting information, I have to keep these videos relatively short for the YouTube algorithm. My preference is to teach in long form, but I've had to learn over the years that I've got to make these things small. So this is not everything, okay? This is not a hard-lined definitive list, but this is a great place to start. The other caveat I will say with this is that people are never explicitly one element. So if I'm talking about these features, this doesn't mean you're just an explicit fire type. We all have a balance, or I'm sorry, not a balance. We all have an expression of the 5 elements on the face at all times. Some of us just have more dominance or more allocations into certain elements. So keep that in mind. You're not an explicit fire type, but that's what we're starting with today is the fire element. So where we're going to see the signs of fire showing up in the face is in wrinkling, but even more specifically, wrinkling around the eyes. Joy lines that show up here, sharp lines around the inner canthus, but expressive lines around the eyes. We're all going to wrinkle as we age, but when wrinkles are a bit more dominant, especially when people are a bit younger, and it almost looks like they have early wrinkles to a degree, then we are looking at the fire element really being strong in that person. Now, the next one is pointed, sharp, angular features. That means sharp, angular eyebrows. That means pointy nose, pointy ears, points at the cupid's bow, points at the edges of the corner of the mouth. Anything where we see sharp angularity and we see those kind of like points show up, that's all going to point to the fire element, especially when we see it in the chin. That's one of the areas we want to pay attention to. Like a pointed chin definitely points to fire metrics. And then the last one is red undertones. So when a person, their natural undertone to their skin is kind of red or pink, and they have good natural rosy complexion without being excessive, usually this is a strong marker for fire. Now, if these features are showing up and they are dominant on the face and you notice them on yourself or another person, usually theory will say the stress pattern that goes with this expression of the fire element is overstimulation is number one. Being overstimulated, doing too much, looking for too much stimulation, being on your phone too much, talking to too many people, going to too many parties, just being overstimulated. That means the way it shows up, we're kind of excessively fire stimulated in the American culture these days, but it's like, I'm going to go take a walk and decompress. But while I walk, I'm going to scroll Instagram, look for my favorite Spotify station, and I'm also going to be listening to a podcast constantly consuming. That's being overstimulated. You need to actually stop being stimulated. So that's one. Now, the other stress pattern that comes with this is if you indulge that and you give into it, yeah, burnout. You're going to be burnout from doing too much. Too much stimulation wipes out the central nervous system. And if these features and these facial metrics that I was talking about are present, you're more prone to this than the average person. And then the other one is trouble winding down at night. This is how the fire element shows up. It's like the fire wants to keep roaring. It still wants to be moving. It still wants to stay active. And this is where people will hit this cycle, is that as they go to bed, they are just constantly running in the mind. Now, in terms of lifestyle rhythms, things that kind of balance things and that are good for the person, one is they need cooling and resting cycles. So what that means is anytime stimulation is engaged, they need to make a conscious, dedicated effort to actually cooling down and resting and being non-stimulated for a period of time. The fire element thrives on stimulation, so the fire types need stimulation, but the way they balance it, instead of just being overly stimulated and hitting that gear full tilt all the time, is cool off, rest after you do something social, active, or stimulating. Then you can go back to it, and then it's very good for you, and you're going to be right back in your fire rhythm as it should be. And then short bursts of activity rather than marathons. So what I tell fire types predominantly fire types is like if they're going to be doing running, I'm like, take up sprinting. I think sprinting collectively is better for hormonal production for most everybody, but especially for fire types, it's like take up sprinting, short bursts of explosive power instead of running 26 miles and doing that kind of thing. But take that metaphor into your life as well. Short bursts of energy, really get your workload into like concentrated bouts of energy and expenditure, and then relax a little bit. And if you can do those short pulsing bursts throughout a given day, that's very good for the fire types. Now, daily support tip I would say is evening wind down routine. That means dim your lights a bit more. Try to minimize your blue light exposure at night. Maybe breathing, anything that you can do. And it doesn't have to be long in terms of practice, but definitely start trying to make things calmer at night because the natural predisposition for fire is to be stimulated at night. And then cooling foods and slower days as much as you can. And you want to think of cooling foods as getting plant foods into the diet, essentially. So think largely and loosely that animal foods are collectively yang and warming, and plant foods are yin and cooling. So just make sure you're having appropriate plant foods, fruits, vegetables, whatever you like, but just make sure you're having an adequate amount of that. And then still having your meat and your protein and your yang foods, but definitely steering in that direction. And then slower days. So when you are very active, try to take your weekend days when you can to really slow them down, probably more than the average person. And this will keep your collective fire rhythms in order. So next face reading tutorial, we will be doing the earth element features. So stay tuned for that. And if you guys have any questions, please put them down below. Thanks.